Welcome back, everybody, to Strike Fighters 2. Happy New Year. It's 2020 now. Hope it's been going good for you. It's been great for me. I was busy with a lot of travel in November and December, and now, January, I've just been taking it easy, playing a lot of video games that are not this. I don't know how, but January is mostly gone by. I don't know how that happened. So here we are. We're going to sit down, and I'm going to complete this campaign with the F4 Phantoms off the Enterprise, because this is it. Today's mission is the final mission of this campaign, and after that we're going to be moving on to the A4 Skyhawk. So let's take a look at the mission here and jump into the details and see what's going on today. The date of today's mission, July 16th, 1967. Like I said, final flight of this cruise. The Enterprise is heading home in just a couple of days, heading back to San Diego, and Commander Horner is going back with them to spend a couple months back stateside. That's the first time that he's been back since the war started back in '65. So we'll get a little bit of a break, and then he's going to be heading back out come fall time. Our mission objective today is to strike a strategic target located in the Van Dien SAM Support and Vehicle Depot. We are to destroy the enemy large storage building in the target area. Call sign will be Gopher. We'll be flying 4 F4B Phantoms. Takeoff time 10:48 in the morning. Over the target by 11:08. Back landing on the boat at 11:32. Flying as Gopher 1, I'm in aircraft 107 today, and I'm loaded with 8 1,000-pound Mark 83 bombs, free-fall, general-purpose bombs. And in addition to that, we have the 4 Sidewinder, 4 Sparrow, and centerline drop tank set up, which is our normal air-to-air defense package, for a total takeoff weight of 57,400 pounds. Gopher 2 in aircraft 114 is matching my loadout. We're going to be the 2 strike aircraft today. Gopher 3 and 4 are going to be my support aircraft. I do this a lot in my one-player campaigns. I don't know how historically accurate it is. Probably not very, but I'll take 2 aircraft as the strike aircraft, and then 2 additional will be anti-air suppression aircraft. So here's Gopher 3, and you can see that he is loaded with 6 LAU-33 rocket pods, in addition to 6 BLU-10S napalms. And he does have 4 Sparrows, but probably not even necessary. Like I've said in previous episodes, at this time, the summer of 1967, there were no MiGs left in Vietnam. They were all moved up north over the Chinese border, and most of them were non-operational. Most of the squadrons, that is, were non-operational because they had taken so many losses. And so, I mean, it's possible that we would encounter a couple of MiGs coming over the border, because they did fly a few missions, but mostly non-existent. And Gopher 3 has a takeoff weight of 51,480 pounds, so about 6,000 pounds lighter than I am, and Gopher 4 has the same loadout. Here's today's map. We'll be launching off the Enterprise heading east as we start climbing up to cruising altitude of 7,600 feet. We'll make a right climbing turn as we circle around behind the fleet, getting up to altitude and heading up to the northwest towards waypoint 3, where we will rendezvous with the rest of the squadrons, get everyone together. We'll be performing another pop-up bombing run today, so here at the coast, as we're crossing over just north of Tan Hoa, I'll be diving down to 2,000 feet to go feet dry, cross into Vietnam as we head towards the initial point, so it'll be low and fast at that point before we turn up to the north. Tan Hoa will be off to our left, that's Ninh Binh off to the right, and then we'll pass right over the Cang To Army Barracks as we hit our initial point, that's waypoint 4, and make that turn to the north to head into essentially the southern suburbs of Hanoi. Here's waypoint 5, our objective point. This is the SAM storage facility, and it's just off the side of the runway at Bac Mai Airfield. A few miles before we reach waypoint 5, we'll go full afterburner and perform our zoom climb up to altitude so that we can push over just a few miles out from the target into our 60-degree down dive bombing run, and we'll release the bombs here on the target. Let's take a look at the recon photos. Here we see the Van Diem SAM Support and Vehicle Depot outlined in red. This very big facility with all these interweaving roads in between the main storage buildings. And there's back my airbase, literally just off to the left there. And you can see some of the small pads where AAA guns usually live, just off the side of the runway there to the left. And over to the top right, there is the southern part of the city of Hanoi. So we're going to be right in between these two heavily defended areas. And we'll be approaching from the south, so we'll be diving down. And once we release the bombs, then we're going to be pulling out, and we're going to be basically right over the airport and then pulling out right over the city of Hanoi. We'll be right downtown as we're making a right, high-speed right turn, right over the center of the city. So we'll have to watch out for that. And here we see a close-up of that building. This is the northwest section of the complex. We have a very large warehouse which is containing SAM missiles in storage, waiting to be sent out to all of the various SAM sites. You can see a small motor pool and 2 lines of trucks out to the left for transport. So, yeah, this is what we're going to see as we're diving down, and this is going to be the building that we're taking out. There's a second flight coming in, also striking this target, but it'll be one of the other buildings in the facility, and that's Denver flight. Those are going to be A4s off the USS Bonhomme Richard. We'll see that on the map in just a second. After we strike the target, it's going to be a hard right over the city and escaping down to the southeast as fast as possible, getting out of range of the defenses. Waypoint 6 is going to be this spot right here between Haiphong and Nam Dinh, and then we'll be crossing the coast out of the country just south of Can-An Airfield, heading back out to sea. Once we get a safe enough distance, we'll climb back up to cruise altitude. But our main concern at that point is going to be SAMs chasing us out over the ocean, as they often do as we're trying to egress, so we'll be watching for that. And then after that, we hit waypoint 7, and we're home free. We're just heading back out into the Gulf, circling around to land back on the Enterprise for the last time here in the F4Bs. Here's that Denver flight I was talking about. This is a strike package off the Bonhomme Richard, A4C Skyhawks, and they are also striking the Van Diem SAM Support and Vehicle Depot. They're just striking one of the other large warehouses. And finally, over to our roster. My wingman will be Ensign Philip McRae in Gopher 2, and leading the second element, which is going to be the flak suppression flight, that's Gopher 3, Lieutenant J.G. Clyde Weichman, and his wingman, Lieutenant J.G. Earl Cannon. We need to be extra vigilant to not make any errors or to get shot down, because that's the last thing we want, is to lose any pilots on the eve of heading back to the States after a 6-7 month cruise. So let's try not to lose anybody today and keep spirits high, and we can all go back together. Alright, we'll see you up on the flight deck. Alright, go for flight, getting ready to go as we're locked into the catapults here up on the flight deck, going through our final pre-flight checklist as we're going full power. There's Ensign McRae off to the left on catapult 2, and we get the signal from the shooter. Gopher 1 is airborne. Heavy weather today, so case 3 departure, straight out, right into the climb as we bring the flaps in and get the radar online. There's J.G. Weichman and J.G. Cannon. Now the whole squadron is airborne. Switching to waypoint 3 as we continue our climb up to 7,600 feet, 61 miles out from waypoint 3. You can see the whole line of, looks like 8 carriers out there today. And you can see a bunch of the other squadrons also launching, getting formed up. And there we go, that's far enough. Beginning my right turn to circle around behind the fleet as we continue the climb up to cruise altitude. Let the nose drop just a little bit, so we gotta pull back up. Gotta go back positive on the VSI there. I can just see a couple of carriers out in the mist. There's somebody just off the right of the nose. And I saw somebody off the right wingtip as well. While we're doing this, I'll set my bomb quantities and intervals. So of course we want to drop all 8 bombs at the same time, and we're going to go with the 100 millisecond release time, which is the middle of the 3 options available on the F4 here. Several additional squadrons popping up. Somebody out to the right there. Can't see who that is just yet, but we're going to end up circling right over them, I think, as we come around. CV-43, that's the USS Coral Sea, Midway class carrier. Midway being a World War II class of carrier. They're bigger than the Essex class, but smaller than the Forrestal or obviously the Enterprise class. So nice mid-size carrier. And I believe that's the Enterprise just off of our right there down below, as we're going to cross right back over as we get on course. And we're right at 7,600 feet for our cruise into Vietnam. Let's go for flight into a wedge formation. Since we're a strike flight today, we don't need to be in the air combat formation of line abreast. Then we're going to pull the fuel flow back to 400 pounds per hour for cruise speed, and then we'll see how we start lining up with the other squadrons. You can see we're a little behind right now, but they tend to cruise a little bit slower at first. So if we catch up to them, then we'll bring the speed back, and if we still have a gap, in a couple minutes I'll push the throttles forward and we'll catch back up to them. As long as we're all together by the rendezvous point, all of the timing will still work out with all of the air defense suppression flights and all the strike flights hitting at the same time and everything. And there's Gopher Flight strung out behind me, coming into formation, getting on my wing. And there's those 1,000-pound bombs. Those are big boys. I can't remember if I've used 1,000-pounders. I think I have with the A6 campaign, but I don't remember if I've used them here with the F4. So sort of a last hurrah here. We'll take out these big guys and hopefully blow up some buildings with them. Today we talk about the social life of a Vietnam-era sailor out on deployment. Aircraft carriers are a busy place, and downtime is usually at a premium, but everyone always manages to find at least a little time eventually, regardless of how busy their schedule is. Most flight deck sailors, and much of the rest of the ship, worked on 12-hour shifts when out at sea. This is still the case today, with a day and a night crew working from 7 to 7. That shift could end up being longer depending on your job. For example, if you were an aircraft mechanic and had to get something flying by the following day. Work parties were also unending, so even after your shift ended, you might still have to help load supplies or munitions, which were always moving in and around the ship. Engineering and reactor departments had their own schedule of rotating watches, and those depended on available manning. They were 4, 5, or 6 hours long. Time between the watches was also not fixed, and likewise depended on how many people were available to stand those watches. 5 and 15s, for example, meant that after a 5-hour watch, you had 15 hours off, though off time usually included several hours of assigned maintenance, so that actually cut down on the off time a little bit. 6 and 6s, on the other hand, meant 6 hours on and 6 hours off, and those were brutal. Whatever your rotation was, you ended up with time off, where you could eat, sleep, or find some recreation. Oftentimes, sleep was skipped in order to eat, or vice versa. Sleeping and eating were the two main off-duty activities of Enterprise sailors during Vietnam, as well as during my time. Reading was very common. People brought their own books aboard, or went to the library, which was a popular place. Reading and writing letters was also important to a lot of people. Sailors would head up to the superstructure to watch flight ops, and when the flight deck was open, many would sit out in the sun and work on their tans. People listened to music wherever they could, on vinyl, reel-to-reels, and later in the 80s, cassettes. The ship had several radio stations that could be picked up on board, so many sailors had small transistor radios in their workspaces. One Vietnam vet relayed to me that as they were passing by Singapore on their way to the 66-67 cruise, he was actually able to pick up the Singapore FM station. The ship also had its own TV station called KENT-TV, and many offices and shops had TVs as far back as the early 70s, maybe even into the late 60s. The ship would play 3 movies in the evening. One movie would be on the TV station, another movie would be projected on the hangar deck, and the third would be in the forward galley. The movies ranged from campy monster movies to prints of current releases circulated throughout the fleet. Back in the 60s and 70s, sailors could pretty much smoke almost anywhere on the ship, with a couple of notable exceptions, as long as the smoking lamp was lit. Cigarettes sold for 16 cents a pack from the ship's store, so for such a dirt cheap price, even non-smokers would take up the habit at sea just to give them something to do. Cards and board games were the primary recreation for the majority of sailors. Chess and checkers were common, and spades, hearts, and poker were all played. Gambling with money was technically not allowed on board, so sailors played for paperclips. But if I know sailors, I'm sure real money regularly changed hands when no one was looking. Spades was the most popular of the card games. V2, the catapult and arresting gear division, held regular spades championships in one of the arresting gear rooms. Sports and athletics were popular aboard ship too. There was a weight room. Basketball could be found in the hangar bay, and sometimes football on the flight deck. The hangar also hosted weekly boxing matches. Music was fairly common. Sailors would bring their instruments on board and would play where they could. Sometimes rock bands would form, and they would play in the hangar during events or just for fun. During Operation Sea Orbit in 1964, the Enterprise was presented with a gift kangaroo by the city of Sydney, Australia. Her name was Matilda. A cage for Matilda was built just off the hangar bay, and the sailors kept her well fed and gave her lots of attention during the voyage home. Arriving back in the States, Matilda was donated to the Norfolk Zoo, where she lived for many years with a plaque that explained her story. Alrighty, so we've caught up to the other squadrons, so I'm going to pull the power way back and let the speed come down. We are 20 miles out from waypoint 3, so just going to adjust my course here, and it's about time to secure these navigation lights as we are heading into Vietnam. There we go, lights are out. We are at 7,600 feet, 400 knots, making our way towards the Vietnamese coastline. Nothing on the RAW so far, other than a single airborne radar out to our left there. So it's from one of the friendly squadrons in front of us, probably Dodge or Denver flight. There's Cobra out to our right. Out there in the distance, they're in formation. I'm not sure who they are. Probably more A4s. I feel like there's just a ton of A4s today. So maybe as we get closer, we'll see for sure. 11 miles now. They sort of look like scooters, don't they? I'll bet they are. We're down to under 300 or like at 340 now. Maybe 335 knots. Looks like we are actually a little bit slower than Cobra flight. So let's bring the power back up. They're probably cruising around 350, I bet, so we'll just play with the throttles so that we can match that, and we'll stay with them as we go in. Somewhere out there to the left is Denver flight, but they're not close enough to see. Cobra, I don't know where they're going. Like I said, Denver flight, if we can see them, that's the squad that I talked about earlier. They are our sister squadron on this mission. We're both hitting the SAM site, the SAM storage site. So we may see them. We may be paralleling them on the attack run into the target. I don't know if we're going together or if we're coming in from different angles. I guess we'll find out. Something to keep an eye out for as we're making our way in. We need a bit more juice out of the engines because we're not catching up to the A4s yet. Actually, that looks about right. Alright, we're right on top of this thing. There's waypoint 3. Heading into waypoint 4, and I imagine that we're going to see this squadron begin their turn in just a moment as well. Come on. Sometimes it takes a lot of stick movement to get the autopilot to disengage if you don't do it manually. There we go. Cobra just hit their waypoint, so they'll be turning. Now that they're behind the instrument panel, and you can't watch them doing it, but let's see him pop out here. We're 40 miles out from the waypoint, which means we are probably about 20 miles out from the coast. And actually, take a look at the APR-25. We now have a whole slew of ground radars. Those are the solid lines. Now pinging us. Those are the Vietnamese early warning radars coming to life and detecting the flights as they're on their way in. Okay, Denver's way back there. I'm not going to worry about sticking with them anymore. We're clearly on our own ingress routes. So we're just going to stay on target with these other A4s. And I think it's about time to head down onto the deck. You can see the A4s out in front of us there. We're ducking underneath them. There's go for flight. In position on my wing, left and right. There's another view of the 1,000-pound bombs over there on McRae's aircraft. And there we go. There's coastline out to the 11 o'clock, and look at the APR-25. Just starting to go nuts now. North Vietnamese, very aware that we're coming. Oh, out there, there's the Ma River to our left, and Tan Hoa, the city of Tan Hoa, coming up. And the first SAMs are airborne, going against our guys. We've got direct hits, so that must be some Iron Hand flights suppressing anti-air defenses somewhere. Did I lose crab flight? Oh no, they're up and to my right. So they're going to cross over the coast just a few seconds ahead of us there. And you can see that they are cruising along now. Once they hit that waypoint 3, they bump the speed up to almost 500 knots, which is what we're doing now, and just keeping up with them as we're coming up on the coastline. People making attacks already as we cross over, go for flight, feet dry. Alright, I think that's Ninh Binh out to my right there, that city that's just on the horizon. And there's the first flak hitting down close to us. Alright, we got a member of Crab Flight out to the right. Braking. Diving down on something, maybe engaging some targets that are targeting him. Oh, there we go. He just broke to the right. With a SAM launch warning? Is there a SAM heading towards him? It's possible. Cobra 4, yeah, he's breaking off to the right. Ninh Binh off to our right, Kang To up ahead. There goes another A4 breaking off, and that's all. Okay, all of Crab Flight has now disengaged, or engaged, I should say. They've disengaged from the flight plan. It looks like they're attacking something. There's Kang To. Flak is starting to hit us, or it was starting to hit us pretty bad. There we go. There's more. A little bit of whoa. And we got tracers coming up from the base as well, so perfect time to begin evasive maneuvers. Alright, 3 miles out from the initial point, full power as we are dipping and dodging through the flak and turning around, getting onto course. There we go, waypoint 4, that's the initial point, is reached. We are on our way into the target. 1,000-pound bombs are selected. We're down around 3,000. I know I said I was going to dive to 2,000 before. We're going to pull back up and maintain 4 grand as we zoom our way in. 4,000 feet is a nice medium altitude. It's low enough to sort of discourage some of the SAM locks, but high enough that we are not within easy reach of flak or tracers. They have to work a little bit harder. Both, or all 3 systems have to work a little bit harder to get us. So we're going to stay here for the moment. No SAM locks so far, though, actually. So that's good luck on our part. Alright, there's Nam Dinh way out to the right. We're now north of that. There's the beginning of the Red River to the right. We're on internal fuel, so drop tanks away. Where you can see we're down to 1325. We're 10 miles out from the target, so it's about time to pop up. There's a lot about to happen. Oh, second flight. Engage ground. There goes the tanks off of Gopher 3 and 4. They're going to begin engaging anti-air defenses as Gopher 1 and 2 zoom climb up to 12,000 feet on full afterburner. 4's in hot on something already, so they're going to begin their rocket attacks on anything they can find, and hopefully they'll be attacking the stuff that's right around our primary target. And then 3's in hot now. And 2 is beginning the attack run on their target as we are pushing over. There it is. Back my out to the left. And we can see the storage complex just in front of us. Hanoi stretching off into the gloom dead ahead. And I'm a little more shallow than I want it to be. Breaks out. Oh, we're picking up something. Defenses everywhere. Bombs away. Ho 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 ho! And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Fast strike. In and out as we're up over the top of Hanoi here. Primary target is kaput. And we're picking up our first major SAMs from our rear left quarter at the moment. Here's Gopher 2. He dropped his bombs. Let's get him back into formation. And we're going to let 3 and 4 just keep working for a few more moments to cover our escape and to actually expend some of their ordnance. Here's the Red River stretching out in front of us, left to right. We're going to cross right over that as we head back out. Okay, 3 just blew up something. Lieutenant Weichman hitting a target on the ground. Whoa! Big explosions out to the right, just off that bridge next to the banks of the river. One of the other strike flights destroying a target there. Oh shit, this is JG Cannon on fire as he's making an attack run, rockets away, and I've told him to return to base. Look, he's just surrounded by tracers and flak. I don't know if you noticed on his run there, he barely was missed by a whole string of tracers, possibly a target that he was shooting at. Alright, and the fire is out in his number 2 engine, but you can see the entire fuselage has been riddled with bullets. And he's pulling out now on 1 engine. Here's go for 3. This is Weichman. He's turning to head back out to sea as well. No visible damage on him, at least. Like I said, we don't want to lose anybody on the last mission of the cruise. That's worst case scenario, so Cannon needs to get his butt out of there. And luckily the fire has gone out, so as long as that 1 remaining engine can get him out, at least over to the ocean, he stands a good chance of being rescued even if he has to punch out. So here we are, high-speed run, heading towards the ocean. I can see it out ahead of me. We are supersonic over the last few yards of dirt here and jungle of Vietnam as we make a dramatic exit back out to sea. APR-25 just showing radars behind and to the left of us, nothing else ahead. We're 350 feet. 27 miles out to the next waypoint. I think we're safe to pull up and away. Up over the top. And somebody is painting us from behind. We have a what I assume is a SAM radar tracking us. We're just going to keep it firewalled and speed away. So even if they do launch, and they're not going to, we've beat the radar just through distance. And probably not having a good firing solution. So we're at 10,000 feet. We'll level out here, pull it back to 600 pounds per hour, and get the rest of the wingmen back on to my wing. Let's check in on the other guys, see what they're doing. Oh, and we have a SAM launch at one of the guys. You can see the rest of Gopher Flight still over the land here. Whew, near miss. Aircraft 114. Oh, that's Ensign McRae. That's my wingman. That's Gopher 2. Luckily, the ECM defeating that SAM, I assume. This is Weichman. You can see he's just to the east of what looks like Nam Dinh. He's in aircraft 120. That's Gopher 3. And here's our boy Cannon in Gopher 4. Damage on the left wingtip, heavy damage on the fuselage, and running on only 1 engine at the moment. Engine 1 is the only one operating because of that big fire. And Cannon has a SAM launched at him as he's just south of Nam Dinh on the west side. He doesn't have a lot of power. Here it comes. Right behind him. Another near miss. Pretty close to the last minute. It seems to have lost its lock because that was fairly close. But it didn't detonate. on proximity, and it didn't hit him directly. So if that was the parting shot from Vietnam, if there's going to be nothing else shot at the guys, then we're going to be good to go here. And as I come around on course, we're 50 miles out from the fleet at 10,000 feet. And we're far enough away from Vietnam. ECM is off, nav light's back on. Make it easier for the guys to be able to form up and see me in the heavy rain and gloom. The low visibility means that we're going to be making a Case 3 arrival and recovery aboard the ship. So we've seen that a bunch of times, usually at night though. I think I've done a couple of bad weather night landings, but this might be the first time we've had real bad weather during the day where you can actually see. But it's going to be the same thing. We're just going to come over the ship, we'll make a big circle, a half of a marshalling stack, then we'll descend down, get set up behind the ship about 10 miles, and then follow the needles right into the deck. So while we're heading back to the ship, I wanted to say a few words to close out this campaign. If you remember, when I started the campaign, I was not a fan of the F4. Never was before, always was an F8 guy. You know, we talked about the classic rivalry between Crusader and Phantom pilots during Vietnam and afterwards, and I definitely would have put myself in the Crusader camp. Now, as we close out the campaign, after having taken the time to study and learn how to fly the plane properly and learning about all of its various quirks, now that I'm able to fly the plane properly, it turns out that I actually really enjoyed flying it in this campaign. It definitely still has its shortcomings. I mean, it's big, it's heavy, it has some forward visibility problems, which is problematic for carrier landings, and the low speed and high angle of attack problems are well documented. You know, the plane can be deadly if left to inexperienced hands. So I'm walking away from this with a newfound respect for the Phantom that I didn't have before, and at the moment I sort of have changed my opinion, and the F4 might be the superior airplane over the Crusader. Now, that's not set in stone. We're going to revisit both of these airplanes in the linebacker campaigns. So I'm going to be reflying the later model F8 as well as the later model F4. So I'll get a chance to compare them again side by side and maybe sort of revisit my opinion. But definitely the things the F4 brings to the table. Now, it does lack a gun, but you get long-range missiles. And, that's another thing, too, is once I actually sat down and actually figured out how the radar worked, that was a huge benefit as well. Suddenly, I felt more confident about using the missiles and the radar system and just understanding the best way to fly the Phantom in combat. So, lots of vertical performance. The plane is extremely powerful, and just being able to sit on the engines and propel upwards through these double Immelmans has been really fun and has led me to be pretty successful in the air combats with the Phantom. It's still sort of an ugly airplane. I think the lines on the Crusader are probably a little bit sleeker, but I mean, it's an F4. It's a very recognizable and, how would you describe it? A familiar shape. I definitely put off this campaign a little bit later because I wanted to feature some of the other aircraft first that I found more interesting and I thought would be more fun to fly. I really wasn't looking forward to flying the Phantom because I'd had such terrible luck with it before. But now I'm a little sad to be, moving on from it. I'll be looking forward to getting back into it in linebacker, especially with the it'll be the advanced J model at that point. So we'll have a little bit of, a few upgrades in that in various departments. So I am looking forward to that. So I just wanted to, just sort of discuss that I was not expecting to sort of, I don't want to say fall in love with the plane because I don't know if I'm like that into it, but I definitely appreciate its positive points now, and certainly as a tool I have much more respect for the machine now. Of course, F-105 still my favorite Vietnam-era aircraft. Like, that's not going to change, despite its sort of subpar performance and everything. But see, that's sort of the thing, you know, when you do like a plane or, well, any inanimate piece of equipment, you know, when we form these attachments, it's all based on emotion, and it's not really necessarily based on, dear Google, what is the best? Our decision making isn't really based on that. So for me, the F-105 Thunder Chief, still my number one. As for Navy fighters, I think that the Crusader looks nicer, but I don't know if I still like it more than the Phantom. So yeah, it'll be interesting to revisit it in a couple of years. Like I said, side by side, the two aircraft, and then maybe sort of form a final opinion, you know, as to what camp I'm in. The Phantom Crusader rivalry was always so intense, but the interesting thing to me has always been that so many of the Phantom pilots were originally Crusader pilots. You know, the Crusader came out first by like 3 years. So all these pilots who were plucked out of Crusader squadrons and upgraded, if you will, to Phantoms, you know, suddenly they changed camps because now they were in this other aircraft. And I'm sort of beginning to see how that could be the case, having gone from one to the other. The Phantom's not better in the same areas as the Crusader, but I can definitely see how it just would have been a likable airplane. So, you know, even though Crusader pilots always had a certain swagger to them, and they felt that they were an elite group, I find myself walking away from this campaign with my beliefs sort of shattered to the core. You know, I don't know if the F-8 is for sure the superior airplane that I thought it was. So yeah, for any of you F4 super fans out there, just want you to know that all the disparaging stuff I talked about at the beginning, I have definitely softened on my platform a little bit, and I'm going away liking this plane a lot more than I did when I came in, and I thought I would when I came in. So pretty cool. That's what you get for being open-minded and taking the time to, you know, learn new things, I guess. And we're a little far out. We're 6 miles out from the ship as we roll out on downwind. And can't even see the ship out there anymore. It must be out there somewhere. I mean, it's 6 miles. Oh, there it is. It's barely visible in the murk. I don't even know if you're going to be able to see that. But it is out there, and we are past the ship. You can see the nav needle is behind the 9 o'clock position, so now we can start beginning our descent. You know, once we're abeam of the ship and it's behind us, that's when we begin descending, and we're going to drop down to 5,000 feet now. 10 miles astern of the ship. Beginning my left turn, 180 degrees around to line up on the needles for landing. Arresting hook is down and locked so that we don't forget it later. We're just about at 5,000 feet as we're circling around. We'll let the plane come level and we'll let the speed dip down. We're under 300 knots now. 12 miles out. So as I continue this gentle turn to the left, as the localizer is coming into center here, and we're reaching 250 knots, we can start putting the aircraft in landing configuration, and by the time we roll out, we should be right at 10 miles, 5,000 feet. Gear down. Center line is slightly right, and we're slightly above the glide slope. 200 knots. Flaps down. 8 miles out from the ship. Target of 160 knots for approach, and we're going to let the plane dip down back towards the glide slope now that we're in landing configuration. And there it is, we're back on the glide. Localizer is centered. Touch of power to halt our descent and bring the VSI back to minus 1,000 feet per minute. Well, minus 500 so we can re-intercept the glide slope there and burn off some of that speed. There we go, but there's minus 1,000. Needles are centered. We're at 168 knots. Just past 2,500 feet. 5 miles to the ship. Under 2,000 feet now. Just staying with the needles. Still centered. Oop. We just hit, or we're about to hit 160, and I gave it a little goose of throttles, and it sped up way faster than it was slowing down. That's okay, we were using the power to get back on glide slope here. There we go, under 160. 2 miles to go. We'll probably start looking for the ship about now. There it is, I can just see it, but we'll stay here in the cockpit for another mile or so. At a mile, we'll stick our head out of the cockpit and we'll visually line ourselves up for the remainder of the landing run. There we go. Final landing in the F4B on board the USS Enterprise. Looking good. Good capture. Radar is off. Folding up the aircraft, lights are off. As we taxi over to the parking spot to shut down this aircraft, I'd have to say that this mission went really well. We were in and out of the target super fast, destroyed it, did some additional damage. One of the guys was damaged on his way out, but we didn't lose anybody. Pretty impressive. that Cannon was able to save that aircraft and at least get it out over the water. If you can't get it back to the ship, they can at least eject and not get captured. So we'll head down below decks now, and we'll check out the debriefing for all the details of the mission, and we'll see exactly what went down. Okay, here we go. Our objective was to strike a strategic target located in the Van Dien SAM Support and Vehicle Depot, destroy the enemy large storage building in the target area. Flight time was 45 minutes and 37 seconds. Primary target was destroyed, one F4 was damaged, for an outstanding success, score of 2,200 points. Remarks: order has been received to halt all air operations. This campaign is finished. The Enterprise is now setting Vietnam to her fantail, and she's going to take the next week to head back to San Diego, probably via Pearl Harbor, and the crew is all smiles about that. Suddenly you're happy to talk with people who've been pissing you off for the last 6 months. And it's all jokes and smiles. So going home from a cruise, definitely a wonderful thing. Okay, let's take a look at the stats here. I've dropped all 8 of my 1,000-pound bombs for 2 hits, 1 kill. Ensign McCrae actually got 3 hits and 2 kills, so he did more damage with his bombs. He killed more things, but I may still have gotten the primary target. Both Weichman and Cannon destroyed 1 target with their rocket attacks. Somehow Cannon got a kill without actually hitting anything, which is doubly impressive. Maybe chunks of his heavily damaged airplane landed on somebody and killed a gunner. Okay, so here's 11:07. This is right after I gave the order for go for 3 and 4 to engage ground. Here's Cannon firing rockets and destroying an SA-2 SAM launcher. Big time target there. McCrae dropped his 1,000-pounders at 11:07:18. As Weichman is firing his rockets now, and it looks like there was a ZIL-157 firing back at Weichman. Apparently he did not hit the target, and then I'm dropping my bombs a few seconds later. 11:07:34, Ensign McCrae hit building with a 1,000-pound bomb, destroying it. He also hit the large storage building, and then he hit a fuel truck and destroyed it. So he actually hit the primary target, but didn't destroy it. And then I hit the storage building with a couple of bombs, and I finished it off. So both of us actually did get hits on that big-ass warehouse, and our combined might took it down. And McCrae happened to get a couple of other incidental hits from stuff around it, which I did not. Weichman and Cannon continue their various rocket attacks on some AAA. Here's a 57mm going nuts on Lieutenant Cannon, and I suspect, yep, 11:08:52, Lieutenant Cannon was hit by 57mm from an S-68T cannon, and that was right in the middle of his, what looked like a rocket attack run, and engine number 2 was on fire, and he continued through with the attack, firing the salvo of rockets before pulling out and dealing with the fire, shutting down engine number 2, and being able to limp out of Vietnam on 1 engine. Just a shit ton of AAA at Weichman and Cannon from these S-60s over and over and over again. At 11:12, an SA-2 SAM was fired at McCrae, which had no effect, luckily. And then finally we're going to see that there was one final SAM shot at Cannon, and that was basically the last thing as we got out of the country. Only slightly worse for wear. Here we go. These are the final tallies of the campaign. 67 combat missions. No change in the air-to-air or air-to-ground kill numbers, but you can see that Weichman and Cannon. Weichman has 1 air-to-ground. Cannon has 3 now, so they each got their 1 extra air-to-ground kill for destroying AAA. And again, our whole squadron ended up making it through the whole campaign with the exception of Roy Vampatella, who was shot down very early on. What was that? Mission 1 or 2, I think. But other than his unfortunate loss, we didn't have a single casualty after that, which was the majority of the campaign. So VF-92, very successful mission. into Vietnam during the 66-67 deployment on board the Enterprise. Shot down a ton of MiGs between me and several of the members here. You can see Carl Spear, 8 kills. He was our leading ace besides myself. Peter John became an ace. Ensign Walter Berzer, and I believe they both started with 0. Is that right? Ensign Ray Voden had 3. So he was almost an ace. Lindland had 4. We tried making Lindland an ace on several occasions, and then we just ended up running out of targets. There was no MiGs left in Vietnam for him to get his 5th kill, so, maybe he'll still be in the Navy or in the squadron the next time around, on the next deployment that the squadron makes. Oh, Ensign Keith Alvarez. So that was, we spent some time looking at him. He arrived as a replacement pilot with 0 experience. We got him 5 combat missions and 2 air-to-air kills, and watched his stats go up over the course of time. And so now he's going to head back to the States. He started as a wet behind the ears, green rookie pilot, and he's going back with 2 air-to-air kills. He's a salty veteran now. 2 kills, and he's a real fighter pilot. So that's it. That's the end of the debriefing and our F4 campaign. This is not the last that we're going to see of the F4 Phantom, so if you're a fan of the plane, don't worry. In the 1972 campaigns, we're going to be coming back and flying the J model, which will be much improved from the B that we had here. So I regret that we didn't quite have the air-to-air combat that I was hoping for, but we'll definitely be tangling with most likely MiG-21s coming up in a couple of years. So if you can stick around for that, something maybe to look forward to. Thank you so much for joining me on this mission and through this campaign and through the whole series so far. If you've been with me the whole time, thank you for that. Come back next time for more flying and fighting over Vietnam as we continue the Vietnam War, Operation Rolling Thunder, with the A4 Skyhawk. See you then.